Right after the.
So once
You're
you
already
get that button in place, it automatically starts.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Ricky, do you want a soda or water or something?
Sure. What do you have?
Well, there's.
Plain Pepsi, plain Coke, plain root beer, plain. Perfect. Perfect.
Sure.
I'm good.
Gentlemen?
Thank you.
I'm good.
Anyway.
Do you have a coaster or is this okay?
No, God. Look at this table. In the 1800s,
Are you starting to record?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell like, who it is and that you know?
This is Dan and Sam recording Tom Walsh.
in the 1800s, keep in mind that it was the colonial period. Brits had colonies all over the world. India was a colony. Much of North Africa was a British colony. Much of Australia and Canada were still colonies. And the same was true of France. They had a large portion of North Africa. They had almost all of Southeast Asia. It used to be called French Indochina. So Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam were called French Indochina, and they were a colony. Along came the Second World War, and the French were obviously busy. They were busy in Europe, and they lost the first part of the war. And the end result was that the Japanese took over for a while, but then at the end of the war, the French are now victorious, and they want to go back into Vietnam and consider it to be a colony again. Huge war. Did they talk? Have you talked at all about Dien Bien Phu?
I don't think so.
Dien Bien Phu is a place in far northern Vietnam, very near the Chinese border. And there was a major battle there. The Vietnamese slaughtered thousands of French soldiers. And it ended the war. But the peace treaty that they settled on divided the country in half. The northern half of the country was going to be communist. The southern half of the country was going to be under a free market government. But the provision was that in 1956 there was going to be an election, and the Vietnamese people were going to be able to choose whether the country would be reunited, and if so, under which form of government, whether it was going to be communist or free market. In 1956, the U.S. didn't think that the free market country, the South, was going to win that election. So as a result, they didn't hold the election. There was no election in 1956. Instead, the U.S. started sending advisors and training the South Vietnamese army so that they could remain a free market democratic government. It wasn't particularly democratic. It was extremely corrupt. It was anything but a democratic society. So, but now there are U.S. soldiers on the ground in Vietnam from 1956 on. And it wasn't going well. The insurgency continued to mount steam. They began to take over more and more territory, more and more, cause more and more problems in the South. So, in the 60s, we sent more troops, more weapons, more advisors, and that's how the buildup began. That's how we got involved. It was, by the time I got there in 1970. I got drafted in 1969. I went through something that's called a shake and bake school. And shake you, bake you, turned out an NCO. So when I got to Vietnam, I was an E5, I was a young sergeant. And I had one of those gun crews. But by 1970, it was pretty clear that the war couldn't be won by military means. The Vietnamese people, both sides, wanted to reunite their country. The question was what form of government they wanted to have. Well, if you were living in the South, you were living pretty comfortably. If you're living in the North, you were not. Communism is not I mean, it's been demonstrated pretty clearly that it doesn't work as a system in terms of producing wealth, in terms of feeding its people. So, but they continued to gather ground. We sent more and more people. Along comes 1965, 64 really. Johnson sent thousands and thousands and thousands of U.S. soldiers into Vietnam. And obviously you've looked at a map of Vietnam. It's a long, very narrow country. And what they ultimately decided was that they were going to give the North everything but the first 80 miles. 80 miles from the coast was an area that they thought they could physically defend. So we had soldiers all along there. These fire bases. There was a little place called LZ Crunch. If you look at a map, well, here, let me get a map. Oh, here.